break. Now, for those of you who are on the call, GoReact, I think you're going to find really, really important as we move forward with edTPA. Anywhere from, our early field classes, I know Dr. Q, you're going to find this tool very helpful. Even in our later classes like methods, Dr. Kelly, you're going to find this tool very helpful as well. And even when our students get into the field, so I'm so glad, for example, we have Diane on the call, because your university supervisors can use this tool as they do observations, but also our candidates can use this tool when they are sort of collecting their video for task number 2 around instruction. So there are many different assignment types that GoReact will work well for. So we're going to learn about that today. I'm going to turn it over now to Cassidy so she can introduce our guest speaker. Thanks, Cassidy.
Thank you, Dr. Hill-Jackson, and welcome back everybody from lunch. I think some people here on the line have been in a brief training with our old representative, Dustin, from GoReact. We now have Matthew, who has been super helpful already, and he has worked very hard to prepare today's agenda and then our upcoming 2 trainings that we'll have this summer. Today, he's really going to give us an overview of edTPA and look at the student perspective. If you have any questions, please drop them into the chat. Matthew, I'll help you and read those as we go along today. And then, of course, I think we'll have some time at the end to open it up to a general discussion. But I'm going to hand it over to Matthew. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Cassidy. And thank you, Dr. Hill-Jackson, as well. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Matthew Short. I am a client success manager with GoReact. I've been with GoReact since the beginning of March. And going forward, I will be available to Texas A&M University in this program to support, help you guys in the utilization of GoReact. So, this is probably not the first time or the last time you'll hear my voice or see my face on the screen. So I look forward to collaborating and working with you all moving forward as well. So for today's presentation, and sorry, I'm working with 2 screens, so if you see me panning from side to side, my web camera's on this one and my presentation is on this one, so I don't mean to make anybody seasick, I apologize. But as I go through today's presentation, we'll start off with what is GoReact, just kind of a brief introduction to the product. As Cassie mentioned, I think a few of you have been utilizing or playing around with the system in the spring semester, so I'll just start with kind of a general overview of what GoReact is. But today's focus, I will be mainly centering around kind of the student perspective within GoReact. As we're moving forward, your students will be utilizing the tool to capture video footage of themselves, whether it's in the classroom or out in the actual field. So I'll really focus on how students are getting video footage into the system, how they can potentially engage with that video footage within the system, whether it's leaving commentary, if there are any student rubrics that you want them to utilize, or some of the other engagement tools. We'll take a look at that as well. I'll spend a little time on the different assignment types. As Dr. Hill-Jackson mentioned earlier, there are kind of different ways that an assignment can be set up that vary the interaction the student has with that particular assignment. So we'll spend a little time there as well. And also part of the presentation today, we have best practices and suggestions to student candidates or anybody that's recording themselves to ensure that not only are they able to get the video into the system successfully, but also, we want to make sure that the video footage they provide is something that can actually be reviewed so that you can provide that valuable feedback. As you've probably worked with student teachers in the past, sometimes they set up a camera, forget kind of their positioning, and then you get a nice, lovely shot of their back for 20, 30, 40 minutes, and you're kind of missing a lot. So part of the presentation will also provide some recommendations in terms of placement and things like that that students should think about in advance of recording themselves. I have a slide with various support resources for students, along with also resources I'll share with you all. So I'll be providing this PowerPoint to share with you all after today's session. And absolutely, as time allows, I'm happy to answer any questions that the group may have now. If nothing comes to mind today and you have questions following the session, I'm also happy to kind of answer those via email, or if there's another opportunity to get together and kind of have discussion, I'm happy to facilitate as well. Okay. So that's the tenor for today's presentation from myself. Any questions, anything before we dive in? Nope. All right, so what is GoReact? So, I won't spend time kind of reading off of this slide, but, for those of you that have not been able to utilize GoReact prior to today's session, GoReact is really boiled down simply. It's intended for scenarios where you are asking an individual to demonstrate or kind of apply in a practical scenario the knowledge or skills that they've been learning in the classroom or through whatever program they're kind of ascertaining or picking up that information. So, we're going through these courses, we're working with our instructors, we're teaching them the theories and practices that they need to take out in the classroom. At some point, we need to be able to see that they can apply those in practical settings. So this program is really designed to provide students with an opportunity to show us that they know what to do and how to react in the different scenarios that they're going to find themselves in, whether it's in the classroom. We also utilize our tool within nursing education programs, business communication programs, in those scenarios where this knowledge and information can be practically applied. We are used by institutions across the United States. And what I hope you'll also glean from today's session as we dive into the system is that our system is very user-friendly for both students and also for instructors as well. Very intuitive. If your students are comfortable using Zoom or YouTube, things like that, that you're kind of finding in a practical setting, I have no doubt they'll be able to take to this like a fish in water. So, I highlight that just based on our customer rating that our solutions are really geared in a way that they are intended to be user-friendly, self-explanatory, but there's a ton of help resources that I'll be sharing with you guys from our website as well that can be utilized, if there are any specific questions or anything that we need to pass along to students. Okay. So with that, I want to jump out of my PowerPoint here, and we are going to get a look inside the system here. So I'm going to exit real quickly. I'm going to switch to one of my web browsers here, and I'm going to pull up a course that I've set up for this particular session. So this is from the instructor's perspective, but I start here because at some point, a student will need to be invited into a particular course they're going to be expected to engage within our system. So in this instance, I'll be Professor Short. I've set up my assignments. I've set up my course within GoReact. I'm ready to start inviting my students into this particular course that I'm expecting them to engage with. You'll see over here on the left, I've got my assignments. Also, I've got this little tab here for users. You'll see currently who's been set up as an owner, who's an instructor in this particular course, and presenters. When you see presenter in our system, that basically translates to students that will be providing video footage or responding to video footage I provide them in some of the different assignment types. So presenters will translate to the students that you're engaging with and expecting to provide video footage to. In this scenario, I want to invite a new student into my course, or I want to potentially invite multiple students into the course. So you'll notice up here, we've got our invite user section, and I'm going to be prompted with two options here. There's a group join link. So if it's the beginning of semester, I have several students I want to register and log into my course. There's a unique URL here that can be copied and sent to students via email. So if you have kind of an email you send to students at the beginning of a semester, it can be just dropped right in there. If you're utilizing some other program for communication, you just share this link with those students. Those students would click on the link. They're going to create their GoReact account, and they will be immediately be able to get into the course that you've set up here. You'll also notice off to the side, if there's just one student that you want to invite into the system, or maybe a small handful, something that it's manageable, you could punch in specific email addresses for. There's also the ability to email those students in a specific invite directly. So you could type their email into this box here. You'll see the role over here. You'd invite them in as a presenter. But you'll also notice this is where you could also invite other individuals. Maybe there's a teacher assistant or a co-instructor that you want to have the same ability to engage with this course. You can invite in instructors, reviewers. If there's anybody that you just want to be able to review the video footage submitted by students, that reviewer role is something that you could invite those individuals into the system as well, just to have access to review video footage submitted by the students. So you'll have a couple of different options there that you can invite folks that are fulfilling different roles within the course. So what I'm going to do real quickly, as you may have noticed earlier, I copied this link here. I'm going to switch browsers. I'm going to plug in that unique URL that I was given. You'll see here, it's going to take me to a GoReact login screen. If this is the first time I've accessed GoReact, I do not have a credential, I'll create an account right here. It's going to tell me, hey, you're being invited into M Short course. The instructor is Matthew Short. Are you sure you want to register for this course? If I'm sure, I'll click on continue. It's going to prompt me for some information here. Whoops. All right, let me type that real quickly. I'm going to verify here at the bottom that I am age 13 or older. Click continue. Oh, that's right. I used that earlier when I was testing. Let me plug in a 2 real quickly here. Perfect. It's going to ask me again to verify that I am 13 years or older. Also, user terms, privacy policy are here as well. And you'll see now that I am within the course here in GoReact. So as a student, I will see the various assignments that are over here on the left. You'll see here all of these I've set up with no due date. There are settings where potentially some assignments may not show until a specific date. If there are specific dates that a submission must be made, you can have it show the due date there. So, if I wanted to set up an assignment where I need to see footage by next week, you could see the specific date there. One thing I will note that if a submission is late based on the due date, it still allows the student to submit that. It's going to show that video submission with red text just to kind of highlight this came in a little bit past the due date, and there'll be date and time stamped as well. So just wanted to mention that since you'll see this no due date here, I wanted to explain why that's showing up as such. So at this point, as a student, if I were ready to engage with one of these assignments, I can click on it here over on the left. And what you'll see here in the middle, this is kind of the dashboard for this individual assignment. You'll see a couple of things here that give me information as a student as to what I should expect with this. First, you'll see the title of that assignment. Here, you'll see what type of assignment it is. I'm going to start off with a standard assignment, but there will be 2 other assignment types that our system is set up to allow an instructor to build within their courses, and I'll explain kind of the differences between those. But this, at least from the get-go, tells me this is a standard of assignment type, and standard for GoReact is I am asking a student to provide me as an instructor a video recording, whether they do it live, whether they record themselves on their phone and upload it into the system. I'm asking somebody to provide me footage so that I can assess or provide feedback on it. See this section right here? This tells me the privacy that's been set up on this. This one is a private submission. You'll see as I hover over that padlock, it tells me that the feedback on this is just going to be available to the instructor and any reviewers that you've set up within a course. So none of my peers in the class are going to be able to see my video footage in this scenario unless that privacy setting is adjusted to one of the peer feedback options. If there's any specific instructions that have been set up for this, so if I'm telling the student, I really want this videotape or this video recording to be kind of an exemplar of classroom management, you can provide, or the instructor can provide, specific kind of instructions in terms of what they're looking for with this particular assignment or this particular recording. If I keep scrolling over here to the side, if a rubric or a point kind of grading system has been set up on this particular assignment, you can see how many points a particular assignment is worth. You'll see these other little icons over here. Markers have been enabled for this, which I'll show you those here in a little bit. And also instructor and student rubric has been enabled, and I'll show you that as well. But I just wanted to highlight that a student can kind of glean from these settings, these kind of markers here on the dashboard, kind of what that assignment is going to entail for them. So I'll pause there if there are any questions on kind of the assignment layout or anything here on the dashboard before I actually jump into how a student will submit an assignment at this point.
I just have a sort of a kind of background question about the student account. So if I'm a student and I get an account, I claim my GoReact account when I first become enrolled in the professional phase of a teacher ed program. Does that account follow me until I graduate? How does that work?
Sure. So the students, when they are invited in, they will create their own credential, and that credential they can utilize to log into any course that they are invited into within GoReact. So, if I'm a freshman and I utilize my credential to sign into my first course, I'll use that same credential to log in or access any additional courses that I've been invited into by any instructors at Texas A&M University. The courses and also their submissions will be tied to that account as well. So if they go up here to this course drop down, they'll see what am I currently enrolled in. But if I've been at the university for a couple of years, I can actually go back into the past to see previous courses, previous submissions that I had. And if there's anything that an instructor has set up in advance and the course hasn't started yet, there may be even instances where you see something here in the future. But this does show you that you will have that credential. You own that credential to access these courses once you've been provided that login link. So, when you saw me copy paste that URL into a browser and it took me to the login page, if I already have a credential, I'm just going to log in with that again so that everything's tied together. And you also saw if I try and create a new account with the same email, the system's going to bark at you and say, you actually already have a credential. You should probably use the forgot your password link so you keep everything consolidated together. Does that answer your question, Dr. Hill-Jackson?
Absolutely. And that's good to know that they get to see a historical record of their courses and can always go back to it. Thank you, Matt.
Absolutely. Perfect. Perfect. So what we'll do now is, you may have noticed here, a nice bright red button here to start assignment. So as a student, if I am ready to submit my assignment for classroom observation video 1 here, I'm going to click on start assignment. It's going to ask me to give that assignment a title. You'll see here, it's going to populate my name into the presenter. It's my account. Makes sense. It would be my submission. I'm going to hit continue. At this point, the student is going to be presented with a couple of options by which they can get video footage into our system. So the very first option that shows here, they can record themselves live into the system. So if I click on continue to recorder, it's going to pull up basically on my web camera or whatever video device they have attached to their computer. If they're on a tablet or a smartphone, it'll pull up the recording tool on that. So, if there's a camera on your iPad, it would pull up that recording. It's going to show you whatever device you're using, the camera within it, and you can record yourself directly into the system. I'm going to come back to that one after I've reviewed the other ones, just so you can see that practically and live in the system. But that is the first option they're shown, the record option. so they can record directly into the system with their web camera and a laptop. There's also the ability, if they're using a camera or a smartphone or a tablet or some other device, if they want to record their footage on a device and then upload it into GoReact, they have that option. They just need to get it onto their computer or whatever device. They come in here, they find it on their computer, and they upload it into the system. If you have students that are working in classrooms or area where the wireless connection is not great, or it's sporadic or inconsistent or a little slow, this is that option where they can record themselves offline on their device, and then when they get to a more reliable internet connection, they could upload it into the system. You will notice here it does stipulate file size limit is 2 gigabytes. 2 gigabytes is a pretty sizable recording, but as smartphones improve and the resolution on those cameras gets better and better every time, sometimes those files can be rather large. If you're taping yourself for an hour-long lesson, you could get pretty close, if not exceed that 2 gigabyte limit. If you have students that do record a file that is larger than 2 gigabytes, there are ways that those files can be compressed to be below 2 gigabytes. I'll show you some support resources we have that can walk students through that. Also, we have a technical support team that is happy to work with students on those options and collaborate with them to make sure that we can get a file a little bit below that 2 gigabyte threshold so that they can get into the system. Beyond that, the type of files we accept, it runs the gamut. It's pretty much all of the major file types for all major smartphones, all tablets, all computers. So I wouldn't be too worried about these different kind of file types. I haven't found one on this list that isn't on kind of a standard recording smartphone, tablet device yet. So it's more of that 2 gigabyte limit that we generally try to emphasize, just so that some student has the latest, greatest smartphone with 4K resolution and it's amazing picture perfect quality. Let's keep those recordings a little bit shorter, or we might have to compress them. So just wanted to make note of that. There's also an option if students have a video on YouTube that they want to link to an assignment. They can literally embed the URL for that YouTube video. They can give it a title. They can upload it that way. Lastly, this is a relatively new enhancement in this day and age. I'm sure most of you guys are using Zoom like we're doing right now, and also in other settings. If you have a Zoom account where you're either recording files directly to your desktop, or if you have a professional account where you can store those recordings online in the cloud, you can actually connect your Zoom account to our system so that any recordings you do via Zoom, you can actually pipe directly into GoReact. So with these links, it'll ask you to kind of connect it to your Zoom account. If you do like the cloud recordings, it's going to ask you to connect to Zoom. Or if you have it on your desktop, you can just find those local recordings there and upload it that way. Also notice down here, if there's any questions or anybody needs help on that, there are help resources directly embedded within this that you could reference. So you'll see here, there are a multitude of options for students to get that video footage into the system, whether they're doing it live and recording, or they need to upload it after the fact. So after running through those, let me pipe back over to record. I'm going to click on continue to recorder. And you'll see here, when students are utilizing this for the first time, it's going to prompt them to allow that GoReact accesses their camera. And also likely here in a second, it's probably going to ask me to allow it to get my microphone. So may prompt students just to be mindful of that they need to allow these just so that our system can pick those up. You also see over here, this little icon. Again, I'm showing now on 2 screens. Sorry, I'm going to get myself a little disoriented here, but it will do a little technical test just to make sure that our system is picking up the camera and the microphone. So you'll see that those have been passed. Here you'll see there's an option that I can also share my screen when I'm doing a recording. I won't turn that on, but it's similar to Zoom functionality where I can have my face on the screen, but also share a desktop screen. I can toggle the camera on and off. Can mute the microphone similar to Zoom. You'll also notice on this media icon, if a student has multiple microphone or camera devices on their device, they can actually toggle between those with those settings. So it's going to by default pick up whatever the default options are, but there are opportunities for that to be adjusted as well. So at this point, I've been able to kind of see myself. I see my microphone is passed here. I'm ready to continue. Screen's going to refresh here. I'm going to see myself again. It's going to make a connection with our media server. And now you'll see I'm live on that screen. You'll see down here at the bottom, I can see the microphone gauge moving. So I know that it's picking up my voice and my audio. And at this point, I have those same options at the bottom of the screen. So if I want to share my screen, I can turn that on. Preparing screen share. I can do this while I'm recording as well, but just before I do that, wanted to share those. I can turn off my camera. I can adjust or mute my microphone if need be. But at this point, if I were in a classroom and I'm ready to record my footage, I'm going to hit record. You'll see here, it now turns to pause and finish. Got my little blinking red light letting me know that it's recording. You'll see the little timer going off here. And at this point, the footage is being recorded on GoReact's website at this point. So I can let this keep going. If there's something that happens where I want to pause the footage, I can hit pause. So if there's a disruption or there's something that, you don't need to see me 5 minutes like shuffling around at my desk or taking attendance, you can pause it and then you can go back and hit resume. You'll see the timer keeps going at that point. I'll record myself. And when I am done, I will eventually hit finish here. You'll see that file is going to turn into a submission right here. Now, when it is being recorded into our system, there will be a little bit of processing time that's needed before that video is viewable. You'll see here, got my little circle icons going, letting me know that it's doing something. You'll see processing video. You'll see here, it takes the date and timestamp of when it was submitted. But eventually, and since that wasn't a long recording, the processing time should not be too terribly long. Keep on hitting refresh. It's going to sit there and think for a second. All right, so while that is processing real quickly, what I will highlight as well over here on the side, you may notice there's some icons on here. As folks are adding comments to these videos, whether it's an instructor or a reviewer, this is where you've allowed a peer to review these. You'll see that those comments will be kind of tabulated here so you can know what you're going to see when you get in there. Also, you'll see these vertical ellipses over here. If I want to edit the title of the submission, I can do that. If for whatever reason, this was a bad take, I want to delete this assignment from the system, you do have the opportunity to mark it as deleted. So, for whatever reason, I can remove that video selection as a student. Now, it's not a hard delete. If I come back and decide, actually, that wasn't that bad, I want to resubmit that. There will be another tab that shows up here for deleted videos. Deleted videos will be saved in the system for 30 days. So if, oh, great, it processed. So if there is an instance where, I've recorded a couple times, I decided one of my deleted ones was really okay, I can go back and restore that, but it's stuck in there for 30 days. So you do have a little time to go back and change your mind. But there's also nothing preventing you from leaving these files in here if you have multiple submissions as well. It's just going to tag it to your name, and your instructor or the mentor, whoever's reviewing the videos, would just see multiple entries for a particular student. So at this juncture, I've recorded a video file and it's been posted for this particular assignment. So I'm going to stop here. Any questions on the recording options or anything that I just walked through whenever I initiated that assignment before I start reviewing the different kind of student engagement tools for how they can respond or comment or engage with those videos?
So when you're recording, you record it and then you hit finish and then it automatically goes. So it doesn't give you a chance to preview it before it comes in here. You have to let it process and then preview it and decide if you want to delete it.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So, have you gotten feedback as far as is the advantage more to upload from an iPhone so that you could review it and preview it?
Um, I guess it depends on the type of assignment or kind of the stakes for it. So, with our system, since they have the ability to, if it processes and loads in the system and they don't like it, they can delete it or, remove it from the assignment here so that it is not seen. But it's, I guess, kind of, depending on the scenario, there may not be any harm in letting it upload in the system and reviewing it here versus, to your point, like if I did the recording on my phone and reviewed it on my phone before I upload it, that gives me a chance before I submit it to the system to kind of, review it and make sure it's okay. So at this juncture, if there is a concern or, a scenario where there might be, some type of, I don't know if consequence is the right word, but if there's a benefit to previewing it before it's in GoReact, that might be a good scenario for recording it on a separate device before you upload in the system. But either way, you can get the video footage into the system. If I do a live recording, I can watch it here. And if I don't like it or something's wrong with it, I can always delete it there.
And just one more follow-up to that. Like, let's say you're doing this and you get 5 minutes in and you're like, okay, wait, I made a mistake. Your only option is to click finish. Like, I mean, you can't just stop it and delete.
Here, real quickly, let me do another recording.
Okay, sorry.
No, absolutely no. And I appreciate you calling that out because I did not mention that whenever I was in there. Over here towards the top right, there is a cancel option. So if, to your point, I do get 5 minutes in and like a fire alarm or something happened, this is not going to be a good recording, I can always cancel this. Out of sight, out of mind.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. So at this point, let's switch gears. I've uploaded a video into the system. Let's say for a particular assignment, I've been asked as a student, I want you to watch your own video. I want you to comment on it. I want you to review it. I potentially want you to fill out a student rubric on the assignment. Let's see the different ways that a student can actually engage with their own video assignment within the system. So if I click on this, let me pause it so I'm not fighting my own voice in the background as well. And I'll talk about some of these settings here momentarily, but you'll see that when I, as a student, look at my own assignment, the screen's going to be broken out kind of into two main panels. There's my video over here on the left. You'll also see in the middle, there's this little bar. You can kind of adjust the size to see which one you want to see more of. So you can kind of determine which one gets more real estate. But you'll have your video playing over here on the left. And over on the right, these are kind of your engagement options for providing commentary feedback. Also in scenarios where a rubric has been set up for an assignment, students can also fill out a rubric for their particular video as well. So you'll see it's kind of broken out into those two main settings. Over here on the left, we've got our media player, kind of broken out like a standard media player you've probably seen on millions of websites. You got your play, pause button. This is kind of something I see on some of the podcasts I listen to. You've kind of got that jump back 10 seconds. I missed something. I want to re-listen or re-see that. Also, let's fast forward to something. I see like them shuffling around the classroom, but I want to skip ahead 10 seconds. You can kind of bounce around quickly with those two options, whether it's back or forward. There's also a speed playback. So if you want to watch it at an advanced speed, you can adjust it to 1.3, 1.5, 1.7, 2 times. You'll also see that you can do it at half playback speed as well. So if there's ever a scenario while you're watching these or students watching these and they want to kind of move ahead a little bit quicker or slow things down, you have the ability to kind of adjust the time or the speed there. Over here on the left, our little cogwheel icon, you notice me jump into here so I could disable the volume on my video just so you're not hearing my voice twice as I try and go through this. so you can adjust the volume there. You'll also see an option, overlay comments. You'll see here shortly when I start adding comments to the timeline, you can actually have it so that those comments pop up as you're watching over here on the video player at those moments. So if I'm focusing on watching the video, the comments will pull up down here based on the timestamp. There's also the ability to turn on subtitles and closed captioning. Something that you may not know about GoReact, we actually really started our focus with ASL programs across the country. We're in about 80% of ASL programs within colleges and universities with the United States. So we have added subtitles and closed captioning to our video footage. It's generated automatically based off the video. Those can be enabled and turned off as needed. So just wanted to mention that if it's something that's beneficial to kind of get some of that audio, or if there's any kind of scenarios where that might be beneficial, you can enable those for videos. There's also over here in the bottom right, I can expand it to full screen if there's something I really want to focus in and zoom in on. Can exit out of that. But what I'll do now is, since we've taken a look at the media player, let's actually have the video go. And I'm going to show you some of the commentary tools over here on the right. So I'm going to play my video. I did mute the audio, so you're not hearing me twice. Well, let's say at this juncture of the video, there's something I wanted to note. So over here on the bottom right, you see this text option that's selected by default. Add a text comment. I'm going to type into the box. And I also want to pause and hope that you guys notice that as soon as I hit a keystroke in that box, the video stops playing. It's going to stop playing until I've hit enter and get that comment into the system. And this is purposely designed so that if there's something in a video that I see and I want to finish my thought, you can finish typing in your text comment over there in that box before the video resumes playing. So adding a comment here, hit return. You'll see once I've hit return, it's going to keep going. Stops, timeline keeps going. And you'll also notice at the bottom that whole showing those comments in the timeline appears there, so that at the juncture of the video, on the video player, I can see when these comments came up in the video. Also, if I click on those comments here on the right, it's going to jump to that portion. Actually, it jumps, I think, 4 or 5 seconds before the marker, just so you can kind of see the lead up to when that comment appears. So you'll see they're basically kind of like hyperlinks in the timeline to when that particular comment was put into the video. So as I'm watching my own video as a student, I can make comments, I can mark specific moments in the video footage where, I've observed something or noticed something. If there's something that I did that I'd like to correct, or, if there's something that I did great that I want to highlight, I have that option to mark those moments in the video and have those comments appear here on the right. But you're not limited just to text comments. You can literally embed a video recording of yourself providing comments or feedback as well. So if there was something that may be a little bit easier to kind of talk about than to type out a response, I can literally record myself providing some type of comment on what I just observed in my video. Hit finish. There'll be a little bit of processing time there, but that comment has been added into the system here. Now, this is also something, these same commentary options are also available to the instructors and reviewers that are engaging with these videos as well. So, one of the nice things I feel like about the video or audio recording, particularly since, we're starting hopefully to make our way out of COVID, but, when we didn't have as much face-to-face time with our students or those that we're collaborating with, having kind of a quick little recording on a timeline to have that nice personal touch, like, hey, at this moment in the video, I noticed you do this, maybe next time let's try A, B, and C. You can have kind of those personal connections. Or if you saw something great, hey, this was fantastic. This is something I'd love to see kind of again and again in these types of scenarios. It gives that opportunity to really have that kind of personal touch with the commentary and feedback. And honestly, sometimes it's easier to say, a piece of commentary or feedback than it is to kind of type it out. So it is one of the options there. Also, if you don't want to include a video, You can do the same thing, but just your voice. So if you select the audio option, you can just literally record your voice and have that embedded within that commentary line as well. So, similar to video recording, I just hit record. See your little timestamp go off. I can record my voice, hit finish, and that's going to be embedded within that commentary line as well. There's also the ability to upload a video file. So maybe there's an exemplar that you want to share with a student for a particular kind of skill or aspect that you notice in that particular section of the video. You can upload video footage or an audio file if there were ever a scenario where that's applicable, to kind of show them like, hey, I noticed this. Here's a great example of something that I'd like you to try next time, or just kind of providing something beyond yourself or text comment there. So you have that option. Same thing like we did with the recordings earlier, you do have the option to embed a YouTube video as well if there's some type of exemplar that you want to share as well. That's then stored on YouTube. And the last piece of feedback here is an EndNote. So the text comments are limited, you notice down here, to 500 characters. So the comments really geared to be that targeted specific feedback for those moments. Whereas the EndNote, 2,000 characters, this is intended to be kind of that more summary, summative piece of feedback or kind of overall, messaging on kind of what you observe from that video sample. So this gives you a little bit more real estate to provide some type of holistic summary of what you observed in that video file. Okay. So those are those commentary feedback options that will be available to students, instructors on any video that they are engaging with within GoReact. These are not settings that need to be turned on or enabled. They will be available in all video recordings. Any questions on those feedback options that I've reviewed thus far before we take a look at markers or rubrics?
I have two questions.
Mm-hmm.
One, you said that there's this closed captioning option. Is there an option to get a transcript of the lesson? Like, does it turn into a transcript? Like if students wanted to analyze their talk?
Unfortunately, so there's no download option for the kind of the transcript or the closed captioning there. It will only show up in the media player as they're watching it within the system. It is a piece of kind of product feedback we've heard from other clients. It is something our product team is considering to see if there's something that can be added in there that would allow for that. But at this point in time, it is not an option, unfortunately.
Okay, that's okay. And then my second one was, would you mind showing one more time the steps for embedding a comment? Did you pause the video and then you pressed the text bubble?
Nope. So I'll go back to here. You'll notice the timeline is moving. I'll click in that text box, but as soon as I make a single keystroke, it'll pause that video. So it's not going to move until I've hit enter on my keyboard, and then it'll resume there.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions on any of those feedback options that I've ran through down here at the bottom kind of corner of the screen?
I think there's a question in the text or in the chat about maybe showing how it works if you have a rubric.
Sure. So I can definitely show that. Any other questions on, and sorry, I didn't have the chat pulled up on my screen, but I can show the rubrics here momentarily if there are no other questions on the kind of comment or text or the commentary options down here.
We have one question about our student videos available for download by the instructors and our students notified of feedback.
So students, the download option, absolutely. And this was something I know Dr. Hill Jackson mentioned was going to be a critical piece of this, where the footage could be downloaded outside of our system for potentially documentation purposes outside of GoReact. Both students and instructors would be able to download the video file to their computer to potentially pass along to another system. So that is enabled for all video footage in here. Just click on that download link and you can download the file to it. Now, one thing I will preface, if somebody embedded a YouTube link into the system, it wouldn't allow you to download that, since it's basically our system is hosting that YouTube link, in our system. It doesn't actually store the file in it. So it's more like kind of like a hyperlink scenario. But anything that I've recorded live or uploaded into the system, or a Zoom recording, those would be stored in our system and you could download directly. So if some student has attached their video in YouTube, they could go into YouTube and download that from there. But basically our system is kind of a host in that particular scenario. So I did want to call that out as a caveat. To the question on, oh, I'm so sorry, Cassidy, what was the second leg of that question?
Are students notified of feedback?
Yeah, so whenever a rubric or feedback has been kind of posted, they would receive an email letting them know, like, oh, your assignment's been graded, or it's been kind of reviewed by your instructor. So there would be an email notification in those instances, absolutely. Okay. All right, so we've had questions on rubrics, so I definitely want to cover that here. But before I do, I also wanted to highlight what we call markers in the system. These kind of brightly colored, Scrabble tiles, for lack of a better word. Instructors can set up their assignments that they have these markers, which can be kind of twofold in terms of how they're utilized. We have instructors that utilize these for, if there's a piece of feedback that I submit or mark on videos over and over and over and over again, you can set up these up as kind of like keyboard shortcuts. So you can have it where I just drop in one of those by clicking on it. So if I notice in the video, like, oh, great example of classroom management, I can click on that little marker there and it directly embeds it in there. If there's more context I want to provide, you'll notice up here, I can actually add more to that and reply to that marker. So it's like, hey, I noticed this is a great example of classroom management. I noticed you did A, B, and C, or, oh, this may have been something that next time you could improve upon by doing A, B, and C. You can add further context, but these markers are a great way to kind of provide that feedback that you kind of do over and over again on videos. They also can be utilized as kind of trending markers. So if you had markers that were noted for kind of look fors that you're kind of looking for in video files, there's an opportunity down here where markers are tracked along with comments on this kind of graph of the timeline of the video footage. So I could see for all the video how many times I used one of those markers to kind of see, oh, I noticed 5 examples of where classroom management, there was opportunities for growth or improvement. So that may be something I really want to focus in and work with that particular student candidate on. So they can also be used as kind of a trending piece for, after I'm done reviewing the video, I can go down here and see, oh, I marked that 10 times, I marked this 5 times, I marked this 2 times. So that's another kind of practical way we've seen those markers utilized as well. You can have up to 30 markers within a marker set. So, beyond just the ones I have here, you could go in and add additional. Students cannot add to these, but instructors are able to modify and adjust these to expand it or contract it or adjust those. So the instructor will determine what markers are available to the student in these scenarios for kind of engaging with these.
We had a question, are the markers preset or does the instructor set up the markers?
The instructors have an opportunity that if they can build marker sets. So if there's kind of a standard one they use over and over again, they have the opportunity to build that within their account. But also they could add a base one and make modifications or adjustments to it for that particular assignment. So there are ways you could customize or adjust it individually.
Or you can share them with each other. Correct?
Yes, absolutely. Markers, also rubrics, which we'll take a look at rubrics here momentarily, but if an instructor builds something that they think their colleagues would benefit from, or if there's a standard marker set or rubric that folks are using across your program, absolutely can be shared with other instructors within the Texas A&M program.
Perfect, thank you.
Absolutely. So if I'm moving beyond the commentary and the markers, up here in the top right corner, or kind of the right of this commentary section, you'll notice this link for rubrics. And in this particular section, I have set up a student rubric in this assignment. The rubric is something built by the instructor that is added to the assignment. The student will not be able to build their own rubric, but if a rubric has been attached to an assignment by an instructor, the student will have the opportunity to engage with it. So this is a pretty basic example of a rubric. And in some of the support materials I'll send, there are kind of materials or training resources to show you kind of the different rubric options. But, in this instance, I've set up something with, 2 domains here. It's a pretty basic one where I can select a performance level, based in this scenario. I'm giving them a proficient for, creating an environment of respect and rapport. I'm giving myself a basic for establishing a culture of learning. Domain 3, managing classroom procedures. You'll see really the engagement is pretty straightforward. Either selecting a square for the performance level. If there's something where I'm giving them X number of points out of a set score, I can give them that opportunity. If there's kind of a checkbox I'm looking for, you can select that. And the instructor will have the ability to set up how many points or what performance levels. They can add descriptions to what these performance level means. There's a lot more detail they can provide to share, like when does a student get a distinguished versus a proficient versus a basic versus unsatisfactory, whether it's your critical attributes or whatever type of descriptors go into what performance level a student has hit. So these can be as kind of streamlined like this, or they can be really detailed and built out so that a student has an opportunity to kind of really review their footage under the rubric that they'll be evaluated under, whether it's whatever rubric is kind of appropriate for that particular assignment or setting.
I have a question about that. Is the rubric holistic, or can you assign portions of the rubric to a portion of the video?
So whenever you have a scenario where maybe for this particular assignment, I just want to focus on one of these domains, you could build variations of the rubric so that it's kind of scaled down to be a subset of a holistic rubric. In those scenarios, what I generally advise is build a rubric with everything first, copy it, and then you can delete out kind of the various sections. So if I just want to evaluate domain 2 for this one, I could just copy the original and delete everything except for that particular domain. You keep those in your library so you can reuse them again and again. But generally best practice would be build the entirety of the rubric, create copies, and then you can kind of boil it down to, oh, well, in this assignment, I'm just looking at this, so I'm going to remove everything else.
Is there a place to add timestamp onto the rubric so that you can show the student where, you got a 2 on this domain 2 or whatever?
That's a good question. Unfortunately, within the rubric, it's not going to, link to a particular moment in the video where like, oh, I gave you this proficient because of these 3 moments in the video that I observed in what you submitted. So it's timestamped in the commentary log, but that rubric is more kind of that holistic picture that's based on kind of the evidence or information that's been captured. Though I do like that feedback, and it's something I can submit to our product team as well. If there were some way, if I'm providing some type of rating, it would be helpful if I can anchor a particular rating or score to maybe those moments that I marked in that commentary log. So I'll submit that as product feedback, but at this time, the rubric is kind of disconnected from what you're putting in the comment or those kind of time markers there, unfortunately.
Okay, thanks. Something to think about.
So let me just clarify. So could I be using these this commentary log and have the rubric up at the same time?
So you'll see here, you have to toggle between those to kind of see the different sections, though I will show you that the comment log. So if I go through and watch it and note all my comments, there is an option to print those comments so I could get like a PDF and have it up so that as I'm going through the rubric, I have that, whether on my desktop or if I prefer to print it off. So you do have the option to download or get that electronic copy of the comments while you're filling out the rubric if that is beneficial, but it's not on the same screen at the same time. Any other questions on the rubric or commentary pieces over here? And similar to the comments, if there ever in a scenario where you want to print off the rubric with your scores, tech commentary, if that's been built in the rubric, you also have that ability to print the rubric off for any purposes.
When you're on this screen, you can still see this add a comment. So when you do that, does it allow you to add a comment?
So not within the rubric. So if the rubric can be built with text fields. So if like I wanted to have some type of placeholder for additional comments on domain 2, that could be built into the rubric, but those comments are going to be basically embedded into the commentary log over here. So if I did happen to do that while I'm on the rubric screen, it's going to just log it in that comment section. Any other questions on, how a student can potentially engage with the video, whether it's the commentary tools, the markers, or the rubrics? Okay. The only other thing I'll notice here is that as I'm filling out that rubric, if I get to a place where I'm ready to kind of post or submit kind of my feedback on my own video, you'll notice here, post rubric. At that point, it would make it available to my instructor or any other reviewers that have been granted access to that particular course. So as a student, I can kind of fill it out, get all the information I want in there to provide kind of my self-assessment. And once I hit post, that's when it would be viewable by a reviewer or my instructor. The last thing I'll note here, if a student wants to attach an artifact to it, a PowerPoint they were showing, or maybe a sample of student work, this little paperclip icon, they can add an attachment to this particular video file that can then be accessed by the instructor or the reviewer. All right, so at this point, what I want to do is I want to hit back, take me back to my submission here. And I recognize that, unfortunately, I'm approaching the end of my time slot here, and I want to make sure that I don't kind of delay any of the other sessions that you guys have coming up later on in the afternoon. So I will, in my presentation, I'm going to add a couple of links that talk about the other assignment types. We focus today on the standard one, which is, as its name may imply, it's probably the one you'll utilize the most. There are 2 other assignments. I'll do comment only because that's really easy to show. Basically, in a comment only assignment, an instructor provides a video file that they want their students to comment on. So they'll see a video recording, whether it's them themselves or maybe some video they've uploaded to the system. And it's basically going to give them all of those commentary options we saw in the standard recording. They can leave text feedback, video, record their own voice. If markers are enabled, they can add markers to the video. If there's a rubric enabled, they can fill out the rubric for that particular video. But it's basically, I as the instructor am supplying you a video file, you respond to it so I can kind of see the type of commentary and feedback. What are the things you're noting in that video? So that's that comment only. Stimulus is more of an interesting one, and will be kind of a practical scenario for you all for that. But it's basically, as an instructor, I can provide a stimulus video recording or audio file that I want the student to record themselves responding to. It's more usually used in our ASL programs or in foreign language programs where, oh, here's a video of somebody speaking, I want you to translate it or sign it. So it's more applicable in those scenarios, but I have seen teacher education programs use it so that they show a video file and then have their students kind of talking about how they would react or respond in a particular scenario. So there may be kind of applicable uses within your programs. And if there's kind of a session we want to do to kind of look at that further, I'd be happy to schedule that with you guys at a later point as well. So what I will do real quickly here, let me jump out of the system, and I do apologize for running a little bit over here today, but if Cassidy, could I have maybe 2 or 3 more minutes just to run through a couple of quick slides? Okay. So real quickly, and I will send this PowerPoint to you all so you have it. And if there are any questions on any of the items, I'm happy to follow up. I did a slide on what those different assignment types are. I'm going to embed links in here so that there's resources from our help center that walk through these if anybody's interested in those. Video footage extraction, that was important to you guys, so I wanted to make sure there was the slide here. Anytime you need to download a video file submitted by a student, you have that download option within that video submission. Courses, assignment submissions are stored in our system for 5 years. So anything that I upload in there, it's going to be in there for 5 years. So anytime a submission is in there, anytime I've taken a course, it's going to be in there for, at the very least, the length of hopefully your typical undergrad, and also going into potentially a master's program as well. Recording best practices. These are things to just ensure a smooth upload. I won't kind of read off this size, but I've also mentioned a couple of these. Uploading file size, 2 GB max. I do have some resources to walk through how you can kind of shrink or condense those if appropriate. If somebody's uploading directly into the system, there's speed tests built into our system to make sure you're above this. But if there is ever a scenario where you are below 0.5 megabits per second, which for those of you that enjoy streaming services, generally 2 megabits per second is kind of the standard streamlining speed. So ours is about a quarter of that. Make sure I get my math right. So this is typically pretty reliable, even in school buildings. But if there's ever a scenario where network slow that day or interrupted, we do have a speed test built in there to monitor that. In those scenarios, it might be better to upload a file or record yourself on your phone or a tablet or something. Some recording best practices, I'll include a link for this, just to kind of make sure that students are giving you good quality footage that you can actually review and provide good feedback on. And a slew of help resources. All of these are hyperlinks. Walk you through a slew of help resources students can check out themselves, walking through some of the pieces that I've talked about here today, student training videos. If there's anything they need to review, we have video files of kind of walking through that. And the last piece I'll show you, we literally have a training academy, which is a self-paced online training program that if you're interested in seeing the instructor perspective, it's about a 30-minute course. You can kind of knock through them real quickly. They're also broken out into different disciplines. There will be a teacher education version on there if you're interested in kind of seeing GoReact as an instructor from kind of a teacher education perspective. So I apologize for rushing through those last couple of slides, but again, I will make sure you all get this PowerPoint so that you can review these as time allows. If there are any questions following this session, whether you pass those on to Dr. Hill-Jackson or Cassidy, or if there's any opportunity we can coordinate some type of follow-up session, I am happy to jump on another call to discuss any questions, walk through anything. Please let me know how I can be of assistance. Otherwise, I will stop because I see I've taken up 4 minutes more of your time than I anticipate. I apologize for that. If there are any kind of burning questions, I'm happy to stick along and answer those, but I understand if you guys need to jump off as well.
Thank you so much, Matthew. I am dropping again in the chat. We have 2 upcoming training sessions with Matthew on May 28th and June 10th, maybe.
That's right.
Yes, okay, good. So if you have any questions, you can please join those training sessions. I asked Matthew, everybody on the call today, he has activated your TAMU email address into GoReact. So if you go on and I think you have to go through the registration process, but when you use your TAMU email, it'll recognize you underneath our license. So feel free to get in there, start exploring, and then bring all of your questions that you may have to these training sessions. And I know Matthew will be willing to help us. So thank you again for being here and demonstrating GoReact. We look forward to working with you more.
Excellent. Thank you everybody for your time. I apologize for going over, but look forward to working with you all moving forward as well.